Good morning, everybody. This is Beto Paredes. You are here for the morning mindset. It's going to be a very good day for me. I actually got up pretty early and then went back to bed because I had so much to do today that I needed a little bit of extra rest. How's that? So, one moment, let's make sure I've got my controls in place here. Dashboard, audience view. Okay, we're good to go. All righty, we do this every morning. We do it right at 7:30 Mountain Time. That would be 6:30 a.m. Pacific. So for those of you on the West Coast that are up and actually spending some time with me, thank you for joining me. And so get a pen, get a notebook, try to take a few notes. What we do every morning is we get together and we try to come up with a few subjects, things that kind of provoke thought and get your engine turning just a little bit and kind of help you into your day. So I try to come up with good subject matter, things that I feel challenged myself, things that are challenging for all of us, and stuff that I feel that if you understood at least a little bit more about, you may make it through certain things a little bit easier. And today is going to be an interesting subject concerning that. So, capacity to manage more puts your brain through the same process that your body goes through to lift more. So, any of you that are gym rats or in the gym all the time, I wish that was me. I actually have a home gym, and I do often try to work out with my wife. She is pregnant, and so we're not doing it as often as we should or as often as we usually do. But I plan to change that here very shortly. We're always working on those good habits, right? But capacity to manage more puts your brain through the same process that your body goes through to lift more. Very interesting because we want to talk about what happens psychologically when you're trying to increase your capacity, when you're trying to, as it has been said, go through the personal development cycle and become more capable. So I want to talk about a process that happens in our brains, and then kind of relate that back to the subject matter that we have here. So myelin. Myelin is a lipid-rich substance formed in the central nervous system by, I'm going to say this all funny, glial, listen to me, glial sands, glial cells, there we go. And basically in the peripheral nervous system, and myelin insulates nerve cell axons to increase the speed at which information encoded as an electrical signal travels from one nerve cell body to the other. So our entire body is actually composed of nerve cells, or nervous system anyway. And there is this substance. It's a substance that actually it cords our nerve cells. Okay, and what it does is it actually gets thicker as nerve cells fire. And for let's look at a martial artist, right? A martial artist actually becomes more and more capable of reacting to another person who's fighting them in such a manner that it almost becomes automatic. And their nerves, almost to a degree, actually respond before their brain can actually feel that response or signal that response. And a lot of that's because the myelin or the cording in their nervous system has become very thick, producing a certain kind of action more frequently, more often, and in many respects, even without necessity from exact brain impulse. So it's one of the reasons why Bruce Lee, for example, was able to react faster than a brain should normally allow an individual to do it. So what happens is in the brain, I'll use guitar playing as an example. When you're learning to play guitar, you're very clumsy. And I am a guitar player. And so I've been playing guitar since I was 14 years old. I'm 44 now. And when you first start playing guitar, it's not only challenging, it's very frustrating because you're trying to get the coordination in your fingers to actually be able to make beautiful music. Well, at this stage in my life, at 44 years old, I know how to play guitar, and I'm very good at playing certain songs. And you would never know that I would have any particular challenges if you just met me and I picked up my guitar and played you 4 or 5 songs. You'd be like, wow, he can play guitar. But if I wanted to learn something brand new, say that I wanted to learn a brand new song or a more complex chord structure on that guitar, well, I would sound almost as clumsy as when I first played guitar because I don't know how to play the new music. I don't understand how to operate in such a manner that the automation that I've adapted to playing guitar is helpful to me, or the myelin that has corded and in the memory of my nervous system is not reacting properly because I'm learning something new. So what happens is if I actually want to become a better guitar player than I am now, instead of being, let's say, as good as I've been for the last 20 years, then I would actually have to go through the process of frustration all over again. I would have to go through the clumsy stage all over again. And it's a reality that my ability to play guitar is somewhat standard, meaning I could get on stage right now as long as you play the certain music that I know and do a very good job. But I would literally have to go back through the growth phase to play something different. So when you go into a gym and you're looking to lift more weights, you want to put more weights on the bench, or you're trying to become stronger, what happens? You have to go through the process of your muscles tearing. And when your muscles tear, you get sore. And when you get sore, you're not really experiencing the benefits that you would really receive a little bit later after that lactic acid's been worked out, or you start, the next 4 or 5 days you stretch a lot, make sure that all that lactic acid's moved out of your muscles. You're kind of hurt. You're actually damaged. And so you have to walk a little lighter. You have to be careful. Maybe you even overdid it in the gym, and your schedule that you had planned to be in the gym 4 or 5 days a week goes down to one day because you're just really you almost injured yourself. Well, your brain goes through the same process, and this is the important point that I'm trying to get around to. When your muscles reform and they become healthier and they become useful from the working out that you did do, you're stronger and you've got more resilience. You're more capable. You can last longer. Okay. So all of us know this process in the gym. Okay. Because you can't even be on social media these days without getting away from the trainers, right? I guess that's on every level. And so we're all fairly familiar that if we go work out in a gym, we're going to get stronger. But we're also very familiar that it's going to be difficult, heavy, and punishing to a degree, and that we're going to be sore. Well, what actually happens in our brains is a very similar process. When you're trying to build more capacity to manage more, do more, and be more capable, and this could be in any capacity. I always like to kind of connotate that back down to sales or challenges in the sales cycle. When you're prospecting, let's say that you've never prospected an industry and you get your first day together, right? Let's just say that you're going to prospect a new industry. So you get a list, let's say 80 companies, and you're like, okay, I'm going to introduce this new opportunity to these 80 companies. I'm ready. I'm practiced. Well, all of us know that the practice really comes when you talk to the first person, and then you get better at it as you learn what the content of the dialogue is, not necessarily what the information is that you got to share, but more how to present that in such a manner that the individual that you're speaking with keeps a high interest, and you focus or culture that opportunity or that conversation towards the things that are most interesting to them so that you can focus on moving forward to a close. Well, that takes a lot of effort in the brain to listen and to plan and to look for the hooks, look for the buying signals. All of these things is like going into the gym, okay? Because you're trying to build the capacity in the nervous system of your brain in this dialogue, in this discussion, in order to facilitate a successful conversation and a close. Okay. Well, when you're not used to doing this stuff, what actually happens is you're growing brand new neurons. This is actually a scientific fact. You're growing new neurons in your brain when you're going through this process of attempting to do something that you normally wouldn't do or haven't done before. Okay. And just like playing guitar, I can play guitar, but if I wanted to play something more complex that or took more effort, I would have to go through the clumsy stage again. So maybe you're a good closer. Okay, maybe you're a good prospector and you've been successful at sales. But let's just suppose that you've spent your time working on sales that aren't as profitable or maybe aren't as worth as much to you. Well, if you want to get into the higher gamut, you want to start talking to corporations and companies that have been around for a while and know what they're looking for and have high expectations of the individuals that come in and do their presentations. Well, that's just like when I'm trying to learn a brand new song or I'm trying to learn a higher level of sophistication on my guitar. The clumsiness is going to come. The difficulty is going to be there, and you're going to have to grow new neurology. Quite literally, you grow new neuron connections in your brain. And when that process happens, it cords myelin. Just like going into the gym, you're no longer as sore normally after your workouts. You're getting stronger faster, but that's because you're going into the gym and you're doing the same thing over and over and increasing the weight intelligently over and over. But when you first go into the gym, man, I mean, any of you that actually work out at all, you know, if you're out of that gym for 4 or 5 months and you go back in, you're going to go through heck, right? You know that's going to happen. Well, the same thing really happens when you're building capacity to manage things better. When if you want to manage more, right? And when I say manage more, this could be in any capacity. We're going to kind of just keep it to sales for a moment. So you're in a discovery call, you're on a closing call, and you're dealing with the CEO, let's say of the first time you've ever walked into a company that makes 30 to 50 million a year. Well, you're dealing usually with either the CEO who was the business owner that built the business to that size, or you're dealing with the guy that's gun for hire, that's got an MBA, great education, probably some success in some other company and was hired. And so you're dealing with, in my guitar example, a much more sophisticated song. And when you get engaged in that dialogue, you're going to have to go through that growth. And what happens, this is what I'm getting around to, and this is what I want you guys to keep in your minds, is just like in the gym, you're going to experience pain. It's a very different kind of pain. Maybe right in the moment, okay, right in the moment, it may become very difficult. You may be frustrated. Your confidence may suffer some. And the reality is, just like working out, it's exactly the same, you guys, because it's a very similar process. You're stretching, growing neurons, creating myelin that allows it to cord faster, which means you get better. Like the next time you walk into a 30 to 40 million dollar a year company, you're better. You're a little more aware. You're a little more capable. You're a little less nervous, right? But when you first go in and you have that call, especially if that doesn't turn into a close on a discovery or close on a sale, what happens is the next day you go through psychological stress. Okay. Sometimes just after, but usually we kind of come down from a rush a little bit, just like when you are in the gym, your body's still full of blood and you're not feeling too bad. You may even be feeling pretty good after workouts. When you wake up the next day, right? You wake up the next day and you can't walk. You went too hard. Well, the next day, we'll just use that as an example for a moment, from going through a very new process dealing with executives or business owners that you're not usually used to working with. Okay, the next day you go through psychological stress, just like your body goes through physical pain, and your doubts come up, your anxieties come up, the lead list that you had when you first downloaded it, just like when you first walked in the gym, you're like, I'm going to tackle this stuff. You're looking at it the next morning and you're like, man, yesterday was punishing. I don't know, man. I don't know if this is I don't know if this is me. Maybe this isn't me. Well, that is very normal and it is very expected. And it's a process that's going on in your neurology that's really creating more neurology, and it's going through an initial growth phase. So going back to the whole guitar playing, I'm like, okay, Beto, you're going to learn this new song. Well, let's just say I actually stumble my way through it. Okay. And it's a stumble. I mean, I can't structure the chords. I'm missing the beat. Everything's not working, but I get maybe two or three nice little strokes. I'm like, man, I kind of played it. I kind of played it. Well, the very next day, my body, my mind, my lack of coordination in playing that song is going to be very tempted to just be like, man, just enjoy playing guitar, bro. You're okay. Just play what you know. That was hard. That wasn't worth it. So in the talent code, which is they talk about myelin and correlating myelin in there. That's a Daniel Coyle book. It's actually such an incredible book. It's one of the only books I've ever seen Tony Robbins promote without having some connection to the actual author directly. And in that book, they talk about something called deep practice. And in the DNA master courses, we like to say that process of deep practice is actually staying in your master state. But in deep practice, what you are doing is you're paying so close attention to the things that you're trying to do, especially new things, that you recognize your errors. Okay, and that's a very interesting comment. You recognize your errors. And so, again, back to the guitar playing example, man, it's very easy to recognize your errors in guitar playing when you're trying to play something you don't know. Well, when you're sitting there with CEO, MBA, 30 years in the industry, corporate guy, polished, very intelligent, very capable, and you are getting into the dialogue. That dialogue is just like me picking my guitar up and going for my first few chords. And you're probably going to be a little clumsy. Okay. You're probably not going to be really, really sure how to answer about half of his questions. And I can give you a really good example of the arena that I'm currently in. Okay. So CEOs of companies at this point, it doesn't matter how big they are, man, I got it. I have talked to so many of them. I understand their pain points. So any of you that are in my group here with Beto Paredes family companies, man, get them in front of me. I'll show you how it works. But I was at an investment banking um, convention. It's actually the oldest convention in the country, and if I remember, the name is NEBA. They've been around for 126 years, and it was in New York City. These guys are responsible for, I think it was, I got to remember the number, but I think it's an 80% of all IPOs that have ever gone public under 50 million. So like this is like the upper echelon of investment banking people in New York City of all places. And I presented there. I presented two of our products there. We had a booth there. Actually, I presented Artist XP and our Geodefense DSP products there. And man, this polished, smart, just investment banker just knew his stuff. Sat down at my booth and one moment here. I got people calling my phone. Sorry about that. Sat down at my booth and man, I was nervous, okay, because I hadn't talked to a lot of investment bankers. I mean, I've actually done projects in joint ventures that were funded by family offices and joint venture partners, but I was here directly presenting Artist XP, which is one of our companies, and Geofence DSP. Well, he sits down and he looks at me and he goes, Artist XP, interesting. He's like, this could be a good thing. I personally pulled about 500 million in the music industry last year from some investments that I made. They were really good investments for me. Okay. And so he looks me right in the face and he's like, okay, give me your pitch. And guys, I've been polishing this thing. I've been practicing it. I was ready to tell my pitch. And I suddenly realized, man, I've never really sat down across from somebody that could write a check for 50 million and if they decided or wanted to write a check for 50 million, could do it that day for one of my personal projects. I've raised some money for a lot of the stuff that I've done. A lot of the stuff I've just built from the ground. So man, suddenly I was nervous. I was like, wow, why am I feeling nervous? And so I start explaining things to him, and he stops me. He stops me because how I was explaining it to him is probably how I would close a deal in a company or corporation. And he corrected me on every level of the way I needed to present it so that he could understand what I was telling him from an investment banking position. So I had to rewire exactly how to explain everything about my pitch because he only wanted specific information that would garner his ability to decide whether or not I was viable enough for him to pull out a pen and write a check right there. And man, I fumbled, I stuttered, I hadn't done that in years. And it was just such an interesting thing. I got through it, hands sweaty, got through it. This guy looks me in the eye and says, "Don't take any money from anybody here." He said, "Go raise a couple 100,000 more. You're not ready for this." He said, "Get through the next 3 or 4 months." By the way, we took his advice. And then he said, "And then come see me." And he gets up and he leaves. And our law firm is Shepherd and Mullen. They're actually the top law firm in the country. And they're the ones that invited us to this event. And my managing lawyer, her name's Andrea, came up to me and said, "I can't believe he talked to you." And I'm just like looking at her like I'm already like overwhelmed with how poorly I did. And she's like, "I can't believe he came and talked to you." And I was like, "Well, why is that?" And she says, "Because he doesn't hardly ever speak with anyone at these events ever." And come to find out, this individual was the manager of a private equity fund that had over $7 billion in it. And he was the only and primary decision maker of what that fund was used for. So I'm glad I didn't know all of that before I talked to him because I may have just passed out. But it was a really interesting experience for me. And I learned from it a lot. And it was painful to a degree because, man, you put me in a corporate office or you put me in front of a company that's looking for solutions and I'll slay the beast. I was in an environment where I was nervous and I had to keep learning more. Well, it could have been very tempting for me to say, you know what? The investment banking world's not my thing. I'm not going to get into this thing over here. There's just, I failed. This guy told me to stop talking. He corrected everything I was saying. Obviously I don't know how to play in this arena. Well, keep in mind what he said to me, and keep in mind this as you go out there and start working to sell bigger accounts. Okay, there is a way to make a lot of money in sales. If you're not making a lot of money in sales, you're not paying attention to this. Okay, and so pay attention to what he said to me. He said, "Come see me in a few months after you get through X." He talked to me, period, which was an incredible thing, apparently. And he was highly interested, even though I fumbled a little bit, even though I didn't know how to explain it to him the way he wanted to hear it. You're in the same position, okay? Believe in the product that you have. Learn the products that you sell, whether you work with my company or not. I always have a lot of people on here, a lot of salespeople get on here that aren't even related to our company a lot of times. Know your product, okay? You're going to have to step into the gym of experience when you walk into these companies or these corporations, or you start dealing with sales that are just not at the level that you're used to. If you're picking up, $800 to $2,000 a sale and you're getting that a couple times a week, that's okay. It's an all right living. But when you're getting in there and actually presenting things or attempting to get a discovery like in our program for something that may end up being a $20,000 a month commission, well, pretty soon you start to sweat a little bit. Okay, but realize, just like the situation I was in, that as long as you know your product, they're always pretty forgiving as to the actual sales process, even though you certainly want to get much better at it, just like playing that new song. If I stuck it through, I would eventually become very good at it. Okay, so realize as long as you're selling the right stuff and it's got the pedigree that is expected, well, they'll see through that. This gentleman saw through my stumbling, fumbling conversation, because Artist XP is actually a very brilliant idea that we have. It's a brilliant company. And so you better believe that companies will be able to recognize and understand, as long as you understand your product well, where the valuation is, and they'll be very forgiving of that learning process that you're going through. So a little bit longer here on the morning mindset than I normally do. They're usually about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I do have calls coming up here in 6 minutes. So let's get out there. Let's make it a solid day. And remember, the capacity to manage more puts your brain through the same process that your body goes through to lift more. Okay. Deal with the psychological strain, and remember, you've got to recover mentally as well as you become more capable as a professional.